would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you and thank you for joining this Light Up a Life Remembrance Ceremony. My name is Shannon McCowett, and I am the Executive Director for Hospice of San Luis Obispo County. For over 45 years, we have been dedicated to providing access to support for all who are facing a life-limiting illness, end of life, or grief in our community. As a non-medical volunteer hospice, we recruit, train, supervise, and support our volunteers to go into homes and help clients as soon as they are diagnosed with a life-limiting illness. These in-home volunteers provide much-needed respite support to caregivers. Additionally, our grief counseling services are available to anyone in SLO County coping with the death of another, including animal companions. We offer individual and family counseling and various support groups. Anticipatory grief counseling is also available. This is our 38th annual Light Up a Life season, and Hospice SLO County is honored to give the community a precious opportunity to memorialize the lives of someone loved and lost. We join together to honor and remember loved ones. We use the symbolism of the lantern in our ceremonies to represent the light of the individuals who have been special in our lives. The illumination, warmth, and glow provided by the candles giving light to the lanterns symbolize the influence these individuals have had on who we are today. Anyone we grieve has touched our life in some way. Through memories shared and through lessons learned, these relationships have presented the opportunity for growth. It is through our feelings that we find meaning in even the most difficult of losses, and it is how we keep loved ones close to our hearts. Grief experienced after the death of someone close is among the most painful and stressful of all life events, and is experienced emotionally, physically, mentally, energetically, and spiritually. Grief is a natural, necessary, and universal process, and yet everyone experiences loss differently. I would like to acknowledge that for some of you, it may not have been easy to join us, to be in touch with your grief, and I commend your courage. Throughout this ceremony, you will be hearing the beautiful voices of our Threshold Choir. Threshold singers sing for those at the thresholds of life and dying by offering a calm and focused presence with gentle voices, simple songs, and sincere kindness. In pairs and trios, they sing for individuals experiencing life-limiting or end-of-life conditions, providing peace and tranquility to clients, family, and caregivers alike. We hope these songs are soothing and reassuring for you tonight. Once again, thank you for joining us in this remembrance ceremony.
Hello, I'm Tony Huffaker, and I serve as the Counseling Director of Hospice of San Luis Obispo County. 11 years ago, when I was asked to give my first hospice message at Light Up a Life, I had to work to find material on dealing with grief during the holiday season. I recall that I found a few brief articles and essays, but as the relatively new Director of Counseling, I would have preferred to have more information easily at hand as I faced drafting my first message. This year, a cursory Google search of grief in the holidays brings up 22,800,000 results in 0.72 seconds. While I'm grateful to see that we're beginning to openly talk about the fact that loss is often extra difficult during the holidays, I find myself asking, why? Not why is loss so often much harder for us during the holidays. Anyone who has experienced loss knows that this time of year can bring a sharpness to it that other seasons don't. Joni Mitchell in her song River tells us, "It's coming on Christmas, they're cutting down trees. They're putting up reindeer and singing songs of joy and peace. Oh, I wish I had a river I could skate away on." No, I find myself asking why we need to talk about ways to deal with grief and loss during the holidays. We don't need to talk about how to breathe during the holidays or how to drink water. Surely grieving at the end of the year is as natural as either of these things. And that, I suppose, is the answer to my why. We still have social injunctions against grieving. We're still asking ourselves and being asked by the well-meaning, "Aren't you over this yet?" People encourage us to date, or to look on the bright side, or to think of our other children. Our friends don't want to see us suffer, so of course they hope for a swift resolution to our grief, wanting us to feel better. People often don't like to talk about grief, so we can be without a yardstick to measure how we're doing. But we know instinctively, as the grief therapist Ken Moses tells us, it's not enough to feel better. While we're grieving, we need to feel better, to have access to our emotions of loss and sorrow. And when we have permission to feel our loss, when we have permission to grieve in our own time, then we won't need to plan so much about grief in the holidays. When we have permission and confidence to simply grieve, knowing that we're doing it right, dealing with it, not that it's always simple or pretty, can naturally follow, like breathing or having a glass of water when we're thirsty. So while we're waiting for society's permission, what things can we do this year to make it easier for our grief in the holiday season? We can accept all our feelings, not just the positive ones. It's common to have the whole range of feelings about someone who has died. It's important for us to remember that there is no right way to feel or to grieve during the holidays, and no one understands our loss in exactly the way we do. We can acknowledge that this year will be different, especially if our loss is recent. You may want to look at which traditions you want to keep or emphasize, and which you may want to leave out, and which you may want to add. A good rule here is to ask yourself, would the holiday be meaningful without it? We can have a plan A and a plan B. Plan A may be dinner with family. Plan B may be an evening at home with the photo album or your loved one's favorite movie. Sometimes just knowing there's a plan B to fall back on is comforting. And I left out my plan A and plan B. If you can drive yourself, if you're safe to drive yourself, always have your car. Leaves you a lot of flexibility in making your plans. We can communicate. Every family member and friend won't necessarily feel the same way we do. Some may want to keep traditions and some may want to change them. Talk about it with friends and family, and remember that everyone grieves in his or her own way. We can avoid unnecessary stress. Delegate what you can. Drop what doesn't seem meaningful to you. When others ask to help, try to think of a way to let them. Don't be afraid to laugh and have fun. It's not disrespectful to our loved ones. Most people do find that they ultimately come to enjoy the holidays again. Remember, you can change it all again next year. Just because you make a decision this year doesn't mean that you have to keep it next year. If you're here tonight as the friend of someone who's grieving, thank you. It can be awkward for us as we try to support our friends and family as they grieve at this difficult time. Often we're not sure what to do or say. Some tips for those of you here tonight: stay in touch with the person who's grieving. Don't avoid them because you're not sure of what to say. Respect the length of time it takes your friend to grieve. Don't pressure them to get on with it or get over it. There's no way to speed up the grief process. Don't expect your grieving friend or loved one will come to you for support. Reach out to them and offer help you can realistically give. Maybe just time for a cup of coffee. Be specific, as an offer of "let me know how I can help" often leaves us unsure of what or how much we can ask you for. Don't stop talking about the deceased. We all usually like to keep memories of our loved ones alive, and talking with those who knew them is an important way to do it. Tonight, as Frederick Buchner writes, as we read their names aloud, we enact the most sacred function of memory, to render the distinction between past, present, and future ultimately meaningless. We move past the social injunctions against grieving, and we remember them at our own pace and in our own way. And remember, if you feel that you want to talk to someone about your grief, Hospice of SLO County has trained grief counselors who are available for individual and support group counseling. These services are provided in person and through telehealth, and there's never ever a charge for them. Now I'd like to introduce Rabbi Janice Meering, a member of our board of directors, who will give tonight's inspirational message.
Well, it's my honor to be with you tonight, yet again this year, to share some words of hope in this time of remembrance. We gather every year for Hospice Light Up a Life with a sense of responsibility to remember our loved ones, but also with a feeling of deep gratitude for the lives they led and for the gifts that they left us. And yes, we gather to sit with others who are also experiencing sadness of loss and grief. Tonight, I wanted to share with you a story about a woman who was enjoying a weekend getaway to San Francisco, and she stepped into a shop in Chinatown that sold beautiful ceramics. Think of those tall, beautiful urns and vases. And she saw in the display case this magnificent ceramic box made of dozens of colorful fragments, kind of like a three-dimensional collage. And she asked the shopkeeper about the piece. It was so unusual. And so he took it out of the case and he set it on the counter so she could see it up close. And the shopkeeper told her it was a Chinese shard box. Now, shard boxes came to be during China's Cultural Revolution, when it was seen as bourgeois and actually came to be seen as illegal to have in your home these ancient porcelain objects. And so people either had to get rid of them, or they actually would break them and keep these family keepsakes in fragments. And somewhere in the mid-1980s, after this Cultural Revolution was over, they took these fragments and they created shard boxes. It's like they reclaimed their family heirlooms and made something precious, like a new and unique art form. But the shopkeeper told her that this particular box was something special, because he said, you know, in China they experience a lot of earthquakes. And so a family would lose a couple of sets of dishes over a time period, and then the families would gather the largest pieces of their dishes and they would bring them to a craftsman. And all the families in the particular community would do the same. And then the craftsman would take these fragments and make them into these boxes, one for each family. So when I heard that story, it reminded me of something, a very familiar ritual from my tradition, which is at a Jewish wedding, there's always the smashing of the glass at the end of the ceremony, right? And people always say to me, Rabbi, why do they smash the glass? And the answer is, we do not know. There's a lot of different ideas about that. But what I like to tell couples, it's a very ancient tradition that's been around since about 350 of the Common Era. But I say to couples, think of it like when the glass is intact, it represents the status before, your status before getting married. And afterwards, when it's crushed into a dozen or more pieces, that glass is forever changed, just like they would now be. And so the challenge is to take the fragments of their individual lives and create something beautiful and new and whole and holy. So whether it's this broken glass beneath the wedding canopy, or whether it's the shard box made up of broken pieces of many families' broken dishes, creating something that's a beautiful artifact of community, I thought these were really beautiful and vivid symbols for us tonight, because in loss, we are broken shards in a way. We all have fragments of us that are missing with the loss of someone that was dear to us, someone that made us feel whole. So whether that's a parent or a child or a sibling or a spouse or a beloved, we experience a sense of brokenness without them. And a common response to that grief is to isolate. And when you think about that, that's so strange, because when we're feeling alone, the most alone when we lose somebody, we tend to isolate and think, oh, well, solitude is going to be comforting. But in reality, in my experience, the greatest source of comfort is really being with people who they themselves have walked through this valley. The greatest and wisest teachers are those who teach from experience, because really only those who have experienced loss can really truly understand it. So tonight we are here together, a unique collection of broken shards, and think of it like we are creating a shard box. In this box of Hospice Light Up a Life. So I want you just to look around for a minute. Really do it. Look around. And you might recognize the faces of people that come here to this hospice remembrance year after year. But you also might see new faces, people whose pain is more raw, and the cracks in their special vessel are sharp and painful still. But whatever your history or your circumstance that brought you here tonight, this is the place to gain comfort from each other, to learn from each other in ways only those who carry this broken shard can understand. Remembrance is hard. But for those of you that have been coming year after year, I think you can all relate that we leave here more whole. We leave here feeling a little less broken than we did when we first sat down tonight. And we're going to gather all the broken pieces, all the shards, and out of them create something new and whole and beautiful. We can create a container that allows our loved ones' memories to be a blessing. Psalm 30 includes the words, "You have changed my mourning into dancing. You have undone my garments of grief and wrapped me in gladness, so that my soul might sing and not be silenced." And the poet Devon Spires, she wrote, well, what would it take to turn mourning into dancing? And she writes this, first, it takes a reaching forward, a subtle movement out of the slump of our chair, not quite upright, but still a movement forward. And then planting our feet on the ground. Yes, we are here, we are grounded. It's now possible to stand. And though the whispers of fate tell us to stay there a while, to reject words of consolation for the heaviness of our sorrow. Though they would have us look away from ourselves and life, we face the dark. We face forward. And somewhere, a prism of light forms. We can barely make it out, but when our vision and we too are ready, we see it as bright as day. Arise, it says, arise in the presence of friends. Arise and leave behind the tear and the tearing. Arise and make those few first steps among the living. And though we will stand up and sit back down and agonize over what we can do and what we can't do, individual acts of mind, body, and soul will lead us to give up the grief and to ignite our grieving bones. And one of these days, when we least expect it, we will find ourselves dancing. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Sonia, and I'm the volunteer coordinator for Hospice SLO. And this is Abe. He's one of our board members. We're about to begin reading the names. Let me apologize in advance if a name is mispronounced or missed. We do our very best to read every name correctly. At the end, we'll ask if any names were mispronounced or missed, and ask that you say that name out loud. Paul Bennett Ruda. Sophia Lorraine Lowe. Christopher Michael Clay. Gary Dean Suggs. Mimi, Mom. Mary Brent. Corey. Janice Hemingway Moore. Charles Adams. Amy Adams Fields. Connie Mae Levins. John Adams. Joseph William Gerard. Richard Darrell Adams. Victor and Mildred Dostalek. James Dupre. Jude Watlet. Betty and Bob Alvarado. David William Brechtel. Viola Miller. George Bedwell. Isabel Brechtel. Michael Borges. Forrest Sanders. Vera Eden. Al Eden. Randy Betts. Sandy Lubin. Christy H. Davis French.
Dr. Larry Hirsch. Cheryl Cutler. Paula Damon. Darlene Jane Danbaum. Linda Darcy. Bill Davis. Stephen J. Brandt. Shelley Diane Smith. Lowell Augustus Grage. Catherine Lynn Patton Arndt. Carol Randall McHugh. Jane Walter Olson. Robert Louis Levison. Mary Monica Bowen Stewart. Bill Early. Ray Deloy. Jack Dewar. Bo Pryor. Denise Dominguez. Karen Scamara. Richard Loomis. Robert Grant. Carolyn May Ann Diaz. Craig Roy. Bob Garing. Helen Garing. Madge Ditchy. Rose Drago. Joseph Drago. Michelle Drago. John Hendricks.
Clara Dentz, Richard Antonovich, Aaron Dentz, Judy Antic, Gary Dwyer, Jack Reddy, Randy Babcock, Mabel Pence, Vicki Brown, Charlie Fagot, Dolores Babcock, Rena Fagot, Gil Babcock, Jean Kruger, Beryl Bain, Grant Allen Baldwin, Jean Bartlett, Sue J. Yanover, Leo Joseph Berard, Anne Marie Berard, Greg Robert Bergstad, Isabel Bernal Alvarez, Valentina Cerrone Moreno, Anne McGovney Brown, Adam Blattner, Jean Waddell, Cammie Dean, Sally Thelma Mellon, Theodore Joseph Bosom,
Robert Dunlop, Sue Ellen Alfano, Bertha Dodge, John Dodge, Joanne Dodge Bliss, Kathy Poltz, Cynthia Calloway, Peggy Myrick, Jennifer Armstrong Toma, Larry Martin, Mark Lawal, Sterling Diamond, Terry Keller Jr., Harold Esmond, Terry Coddington, Chad Flanagan, General C. Fletcher, Josie Joe Netzley, Betty Page, Otis Page, Diane Fritz, Matthew Gardner, Virginia Monfredo, Angelina Gianco, Herbert P. Goebel, Jonathan M. Goebel, Michael H. Goebel, Mary Williams, Patrick Williams.
David Godsey, Robert Brancart, Desi Mae Brancart, Ed Marcombe, Linda Anderson, David Lyon, Robin Brancart, Patty Riley, Nancy Crawford, David Merriweather, John Brooks, Lori Brown, Vicki Taylor, Carrie Brown, Maria T. Tran, Dennis Cementina, Marilyn Brandmeier, Judith Gluck, Roger Hanso, Zachary Young, Layla Gomes, Danny Sherwin, Josephine Brenshaw, Stuart Halpin, Louise Halpin, James Corcoran, Margaret Corcoran, Richard Rick Edward DePaul, Jr., Gregory Gregory Cryans, Augustine Cryans, Ken and Wilma Jackson, Dana and Beth Jackson.
Joanna Golden Sims, Paul Stephen Gordon, Chris Wells, Janet Edgerton, Paula Christine Freeman, Elwood Joseph Freeman, Bob Hain, Marlo Miller, Felix Rusnak, Derek C. Hansen, Joe Harmon, Kimberly Eric, Margaret Alice Miosi Henderson, Val Haringas, Frank Haringas, Gloria Goland, Hank Goland, Phyllis Hirschberger, Laura Hirschberger Rodiger, David Torrance, Kim Brady Pendleton, Rich Dickey, Glenn Hirschberger, Cody Carroll, V.L. Holland, Larry and Hilda Nome, Gracie Dodd, Inga and Linda Barker.
And Michael Allen Jackson.
My name is Sonny Brown. I'm the Grief Counselor Program Coordinator. Randy Kessler, Al Hausinger, Dorothy Hausinger, Ruth Burns, John Hawkins, Jim McGreevy, Ralph Burns, Thomas Gummer, Pamela Renee McDougall, Todd Hubler, Gretchen Hogg, Kempton Hune, Frida Frisch, Lillian Frisch, Ruby Custer, Peter Custer, Cheryl Keffery, Jerry Frederick, Donna Kaler, Mitzi Ikeda, Paige Elizabeth Ikeda, Kaz Ikeda, Julian Barza, Tyra Solomon, Edward Jennings, Thomas Jodry.
Martha Leora Matthews, Sarah Matthews, Loretta Kearns, Gerald May, Wanda Lucas, Mark May, Frida Kenny, Norman E. Alberti, Betty J. Alberti, Howard T. McAllister, Ella Maria McAllister, Glenn Sipe, Emma Sipe, Callie McCollum, Chemo McCollum, Venice McCollum, Ken McCollum, Dawn Ellen McCoy, James Oliver McCoy, Jeffrey David Sutton, Mark William Yenter, Thomas William McDermott, Marie Linda McDermott, James Lane McDermott, Gary Cooper Golden,
Gary Johnson, Robert Boss, Jay Seastrunk, Veronica and Peter Simpson, Catherine and Tom Bagnall, Wanda Preble, Clayton McDonald, Margaret and Al Peavy, George Pierce, Sandra Balistreri, Jack Wilfred Rogers, Alan Howard Michaels, John Karras, Dennis Keene, John Keene, Ed and Evelyn Ferguson, Beverly Cooper, Jill Stevens, Les and Margie Bowman, Margaret C. Heistand, James Klein, Grandma Laura Gisseline, Dorothy Klein, Dave Gottlieb, Steve Kritz, Patty Wayland, Christopher Lapoya, that's Christopher Lapola, Marie Wilkins, Tiffany Diane Lamb Corkins, Carrie Melvin, Marge Carestis,
Terry Adams McGehee, Dorothy McGehee, Beatrice L. Cole, Federico C. Cadiz, Rosalie G. Cadiz, Dr. William Henry McGehee, Herbert Cole, Dr. William G. McGehee, Terry Tilton, Ron McKenna, Nathan Alex McLean, Robert J. McNeil, MD, Scott McCowett, Connie Clucker, Don Clucker, Mel Pollock, Jean Pollock, Stan Robeson, Jackie Robeson, Joey Liu, George, or as some would call him, Pete Gardella, Desiree Levy, also using the names Lulu, Tia, and Desi, Jet Irving Nepomuceno, Hilokio Toyota, Teresa Wright, Charles Mohap, and Montgomery Martin, Leoa Lee, Russell Morgan, Harold Fay, Eleanor Morgan, Jenna Pittman, Gary L. Stillwell, David F. Mosher.
Jorge Lara Fowler, Dean McCord, Patricia McCord, Lawrence Larson, Grace Larson, Richard Robb, Glenn Lutz, Donna Don, Michael George Lawler, Brian Joseph Lawler, Elwood Tony Ledford, Carolyn Benitez, Beatrice Joyce, Nancy Leslie Rollins, Marianne Stevens, Richard Erickson Leslie, Betty Ann Reinhardt, Robert Bob Lilly, Mary Beth Lorenzen, or Sunshine, Marge McGough, John McGough, John Lujano, Nancy Churl, Dennis Gummerman, Don Birch, George L. Martin, Barbara J. Martin, Marianne Gady, Harold Gady, John Marzich, Dan Separak,
Jerry Ellis, Doug Myers, Michael Stephen Neff, Jan Newman, Jeff Newman, John Niznik, John D. Noble, Kyle Trahan, Dorothy Mae Lipton Grubbs, Gerald Allen Owen, T.K. Kimura, Theodore Kops, Christopher Ortega, Benjamin Timothy Ortiz, Claire Legg, Dr. Philip Ortiz, Raymond Perez, Sir Buddy Legg, Charles Painter, Marie Rogers, Bill Rogers, Kim Brady Pendleton, Bill Senna, Richard Dickey, Gigi Senna, Babe Stringham, Bill Van Horn, John F. Willie.
My name is Karen Rogers. This is my husband, Steve Rogers. We're both end-of-life doulas with Hospice SLO. Robert Perry, Joyce Orndorff, Virginia Perry, Hugh Orndorff, Billy Zweifel, Paul Pobor, Frank Serpa, George Casey, Sheila Porrigoberger, David Leonhood, Ralph Leonhood, Sevilla Pretty, Charlotte Leonhood, Fred Kester, Beverly Roca, George E. Raymond, Manuel Roca, Evelyn Raymond, Jean and Irene Rice, Sharon Milligan Regensburg, William Milligan, James Edward Ritter, Lavanya Milligan.
Joseph Nuez, Jean Bauman Lambert, William Frederick Lambert, Joseph William Smith, Joseph Raymond Smith, Charlotte Beatty Smith, Beverly Hope, John Splavia, got it written here too, John Splivalo, Howard Sternberg, Sheila Stolmeyer, Irene Stonemeyer, Carl Stonemeyer, Peggy Stonemeyer, Herbert Stonehauer, Joshua Spleenman, Gregory John Stratton, Elaine Goudet, Floyd Tift, Kay Tift, Mel Frooms,
Bill Rollman, Mark Glenn Dolson, Enid Hacker, Dorothy Ross, William Ernst, Felix Rusnak, Karen Strickwerda, Dennis Schmidt, Jeff Garvey, Francis Mansfield, Carlos Rusnak, Howard Mansfield, Marion Matalka, Gwen Dobre, Arlene Walters Salazar, Darlene Bonjour Salazar, Martin Walters, Leslie Bonjour, Patricia Jean Wilkerson, Janet Schweikart,
Marcel Texeria, Edith Estrada, Gary Souza, Samuel Estrada, Helen Texera, Richard F. Thompson, Kevin Delmont Conley, Dennis Dyer, Bob Tolley, Gail Dyer, Fusa and Richard Toma, Louise and Ronaldo Robertson, Elsa Bisbee, Evelyn and William Bisbee, Elsie Robinson, SLO County 3rd District Supervisor Adam Craig Hill, Adrian Gonzalez, Liam Alexander Taylor, Skinny Red, Kierman Hopkins, Dante Garcia, Jean Honeyman, Barbara Joyce Harshaw, Russell David Ronson, Don McGuire,
Kathy Silva, Jim Sargent, Susan Sargent, Cindy Sargent, Rose Sargent, Jeannie Silva, Lou Silva, Barbara Davis, Jean-Marc Poulin, Cato Sylvain, Alba Buitrago, Elba Moore, Malcolm Lindstedt, Nelson Osorio, Crystal Mayer, Francie Ward, Lowell Helsted, Gladys Helsted, Laura Bracamonte, Joan Powell, Kelly Nicole Sheehy, Polly Souza, Mel Souza, Bob Carsley, Zuja Hegedus, Diane Cooley, Jeffrey Nile Height, Avery Hong, Coach Carol Edwards, Carol Borg, Millie Rogers, Dr. Lucy Miller.
Marjorie McNana, Virgil McNana, Gary Dwayne Vieira, Gary Vrieken, Amber Monique Woodbury Weibel, Jerry Mason, Lloyd Aid Wildner, Margaret Swesny, Mary N. Weidler, Beth Mareda, Howard Weinberg, Debbie Golf, Jackson Wood, Gary Wood, Mary Niles, Roger Niles, Joan Mendonza, Lane Wilson, Mary Beth Wilson, Michael Craig Wilson, Jack D. Wilson, Mary Iva Consul, Dean H. Consul, Jr., Kelly.
Hi, I'll be the last reader for today. My name is Kim Chartrand. I'm the care manager with Hospice SLO County. Corey Hirschman, Cecilia Morquecho, Shirley Ann Gardner, Carly Kroc, Matilde Pacheco Santos, Mary Baby Grams Myers, Beverly Haddad, Merle Miller, John Stevens, John Heil, Patricia McCarthy, Kenneth Sandwall, Mary Kirschbaum, V.L. Holland, Susan Edstrom, Barbara White, Ann Lucas, Nancy Morrow, John Cunningham, Stephanie Rothbauer, Margaret Donnellan, Betty Moya, Jane Sturdivant, Helen Rose Clark, David Edstrom, John Kalkowski, Anne Yu, Robert E. Johnston, Donovan Davis, Gary Stanley, Alicia Guillaume, Gus Hopt, Shimi Lauch, Demetrius Guillaume, Denise West, Katarina Wolf, Marcia Ross, Jackson Anthony Wood, Donna Weislick, Gerald Weislick, Shirley Fosnot, Francisca Garcia in honor of Dawn, Colonel Thomas Ruben Hidalgo, Jerry, Tony, Hazel, Pauline Ragsdale, Joan Carpenter, Christine Brannon, Evans Cowan, Angela Marie, Joan Leapman, Congressman Walter Capps, Craig Lawton, Jim White, Ana Escobar, Rita DiMundo, Jason Mitchell Aracalde, Arthur Roop, Ron Roundy, Nels Contag Rydberg, Brendan Linsmeyer, Stanley Pregartner, Lori Garcia, Carol Ann, Chad Flanagan, Diane Morris, Howard Webb. The following names I'll read are individuals who are living and someone has chosen to honor them in the ceremony tonight. In honor of Roberta Arabalo, Dalu Brancart, Patricia Gummerman, and Betty Lou McCoy. If a name was missed or mispronounced incorrectly, please say the name now. Any other names? Thank you.
First and foremost, I would like to give a special thank you to Susan Olson, who has coordinated our Light Up a Life season this year and for the last couple of years. So thank you, Susan. And thank you also to Rabbi Janice, Tony Huffaker, our name readers, Bob Liepman on cello, and our Threshold singers. It has been so wonderful to be with you all in person this year, and for those of you who are joining us live from home. We are honored to be offering 4 more in-person ceremonies in Arroyo Grande, Atascadero, Cayucas, and Pause to Remember in San Luis Obispo. The ceremony has been live streamed and recorded, and in a few days you can view the recording on our website at hospiceslo.org. We will now be exiting the mission for the candle and tree lighting ceremony. We will be gathering at the tree at the top of the steps right next to the mission. You may exit from either door back there or back here, but this is not well lit, so I encourage you to go that way. And you may pick up your candle from a volunteer as you exit, and we will light our candles at the tree. And Bob Liepman will be playing his beautiful cello music as we exit. Thank you, Bob. Thank you all.
we're getting a lighter to light our candles. Oh, there, Deborah has them. Yeah, you can go ahead and start. If anybody wants to come closer, you are welcome to. You can find somebody who has a candle lit near you, so everyone's candle can be illuminated. Can you hear me over? Yeah, great. Well, we're all together experiencing the glow and warmth of this candlelight. Just take a moment, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes. Be careful holding your candle with closed eyes. Take a moment, if you would, and imagine the light and the warmth of that flame just in your heart. And feel the light from the memories that we've heard tonight, from the words of inspiration, from the names of your loved ones, and feel those thoughts lighting you up from the inside. And now imagine sending that light and warmth up into the branches of our hospice tree, which we will light. And as you open your eyes, just all together, we're going to recite this poem, and we're going to do this responsively. So I'll read a line and then have you say, "We remember them." And this is a poem that was a prayer, really, that's been written by Sylvan Kamens and Rabbi Jack Kramer. At the rising sun and at its going down, at the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, at the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, at the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer, at the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of the autumn, at the beginning of the year and when it ends. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, when we are lost and sick at heart, when we have decisions that are difficult to make, and when we have joy we crave to share, when we have achievements that are based on theirs. For as long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. So let's all go ahead and blow out your lights together, and we will turn on, have the tree illuminated. Okay. Beautiful. So I just want to, on behalf of the hospice staffs, Hospice SLO County staff and board of directors, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. And I want to thank you for your ongoing support. Our organization has been of service for a long time in this community, and we are all volunteer, and we offer services to everyone because we are free of charge. And we do that based on donations, grants, bequests, and by the support of all of you. So you have our deep gratitude for your support, for coming together and supporting each other in this moment of remembrance. And we are all wishing you a peaceful time, a time of comfort during this holiday season. And we're wishing you all a good night. Thank you.